Good evening. This is Anderson Cooper, reporting from CNN London. It's been about 7 years since I was stationed in England. And 16 years since the epic election between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. With the passing of President Clinton 18 months ago, nearly 4 years after President Bill Clinton, I now feel that it is time for me to resign my position with CNN. I do this with great reservation. Not because I will miss reporting. But I will most definitely miss you. First, let me say that this production is not sanctioned by CNN, and I thank my private staff and a few videographers that have agreed to help me. And, with the restrictions placed on Facebook and Twitter by the globalist control of the United Nations, it is not clear that this production will ever be broadcast. I will put this post up later today, and hopefully it will stay long enough to be seen. I had to do this because I no longer have fear of losing my family to the Democrat machine. But, I fully expect to be denigrated by press for this production, both from my own CNN colleagues, and other media. I have had reservations about my behavior during the 2016 election. They have haunted me. And as the years have gone by, each time my reports were tamped down by CNN, I wanted to speak out. But fear is a diabolical thing, and the Democrat machine is expert at dispensing fear. With the loss of my domestic partner last month, and because it is clear that 16 years of Democrat rule has degraded the rights of gays and women, it is now time to speak up. In this presentation, I will cover several topics and stories that led to only one political party, and the demise of the country that I love, and unfortunately helped to corrupt. First, let me say that the American people are at fault too. This simple question should have been asked. Do you want a criminal for president? No, we did not ask. We hid the facts from you. But you were so engrossed in your mobile devices, you didn't care. With that said, let's turn now to the mistake we made in 2016, namely, the election of Hillary Clinton. As a result of that event, we now have: first, the Clinton Compassion Act of 2019, which allowed illegal immigrants to overrun the Southwest and be granted amnesty and citizenship. Second, the Democrat Party that ran amok with political correctness, allowed Muslims to push Sharia law. Third, a surrogate war with Russia was started in the Middle East. Fourth, the 2018 single-payer healthcare system, that we call Hillary Care, had patrons dying due to long delays. Fifth, 11 years after the 2021 Climate Change Act, we were supposed to be able to control the weather. Sixth, the constant Orwellian lies, public ridicule, and corruption from the government is never ending. Seventh, at the James Comey building, in 2017, there was a massive exodus of agents from the FBI, after all Clinton investigations were terminated by the president. Eighth, the IRS now functions as a political arm of the Democrat Party. Ninth, poverty is at 46%. Unemployment is at 14.5%. And inflation is at 12%. 10th, the Supreme Court now has 8 of the 9 justices appointed by Democrats. When Donald Trump warned us that we would lose our country, sadly he was correct. Fortunately for him, he died before seeing the end, but I suspect he always knew it was coming. Where did we go wrong? Unfortunately, the press was complicit in this, preying on the low-information voter, by covering only stories that were against Trump. The criminality of the Clinton Foundation, and Ambassador Clinton's manipulation of pay-for-play should have been discussed. After all, who makes $300 million from 20-minute speeches? I guess it was always easier to blame foul language and sex than it was to do the hard work of discussing the fraud, criminal activity, and bribery that occurred on Clinton's watch. Add to that, the fact that Obama was the first black president, and, as a result, got away with questionable ethics. Next, women decided that a woman president was a good idea. So, we got Hillary Clinton as president, with all her criminal ethics. In my opinion, this will be a stain on all females who want to become president, for generations to come. What women did not know, was that Hillary was never for them. She was always for aggrandizing her own pockets, and the decisions she made were ones that only increased her power. As a result, she allowed over 500,000 Syrian refugees during her tenure, and then moved them to Minnesota, where they have effectively set up an Islamic State. Blinded by political correctness, the generations of people living there were pushed out, as sections of multiculturalism were set up around the city. Women, who for decades had fought for equality, were now suddenly told not to go to that part of town. And, if they did, it was their own fault that they were raped. Muslim tradition requires that infidels be treated as dogs, and Islamic leaders encourage this treatment of women. But, as a gay man, I have to also point out that young boys in K-12 schools were also being raped. We Americans, and mostly we reporters, should have seen this coming as a clash of cultures. All of Europe was about to burn in 2016, and a good portion actually did in 2019 as ISIS was finally engaged. The rapes and treatment of women were completely ignored in 2016. I have attached a link to 2 videos from that era at the end of this report. One is a testimonial of an Arabic woman, and the other is a report on the Syrian migration to Europe. At the time, we reporters, and the Democrat Party, called anyone that dare say anything a xenophobic racist. In fact, as I look back now, xenophobia and racism are the same thing, and do not apply here, because religion is not a race. The bottom line is that this is a clash of religions, and of modernity versus ancient religious mores. The reason given by President Clinton at the time of the opening of our borders was compassion. We now know, from the defunct WikiLeaks, that in fact, she was merely replacing the blacks and Hispanics with another class of citizens. She created a new basket, to quote the terms of that era, that could be filled with Democrat votes. In fact, the Democrat Party has always sought groups that could be kept down and dependent. But now I have helped them destroy my country by wearing blinders at the time. The war in the Middle East was started when an American fighter shot down 2 Russian planes for entering the no-fly zone. Arguments ensued, and country after country was pulled in, until the entire area was at war. With the president's lack of support for Israel, they were also pulled in, and with Iran going nuclear in 2026, there was an exchange of 8 nuclear attacks before the United Nations calmed things down. In my humble opinion, this war could have been completely avoided by a less power-hungry president. With nearly 23,000 American soldiers dead, our sons and daughters have suffered from my need to be part of the elite. The veterans' hospitals are overrun, and the president's proposed expansion to allow vets to use public care is useless since it has longer lines than the VA. Sadly, nearly 873 vets have died online, waiting for care. This brings me to Hillary Care, which for me, has been around nearly 13 years. Despite the complete failure of Obamacare, the press supported the changes by intimidating the Republicans until they lost the House in 2018. My only comment is that Obamacare was bad, but not this bad, and in fact, my partner died while waiting for an antibiotic prescription that was readily available in early 2000. Yes, much of the cost is covered by the government, but so is the distribution. The incentive for drug companies to develop new drugs is gone, leaving Ireland as the biggest innovator of new drugs. The next topic comes straight from Orwell. We should have known in 2016, when Hillary Clinton stood up and said contradictory things to the video evidence against her. But those in the press bought it and pushed her response, while ignoring those videos. We made arguments that the Russians stole documents shown on WikiLeaks, and ignored the fact they were written by the Clinton team. We failed the American people. We now know that the FBI, the Justice Department, the IRS, and most of the federal government was complicit, and is now completely Orwellian. For example, the recent comment that the waiting time for service under Hillary Care is under an hour is a typical outright lie. But I have nothing I can say to put that lie to truth. It would never get out. The FBI is a corrupt arm of the president, acting mostly like the old Chicago cops that harassed and even killed those people that were against the mob. We have no Elliot Ness today. Mostly because all the good agents have either resigned or were fired, and replaced by political appointees. At the same time, if the FBI cannot stop you, the president uses the IRS to seize your assets, and either put you out on the street, or into jail for tax evasion, even if you are not guilty. Ignoring the government numbers, which are a lie, we find poverty is up, unemployment is up, and inflation is making the purchase of a loaf of bread nearly impossible. Add to this, a debt that now exceeds our GDP, and a bond rating that Moody recently lowered to AA, later to be reinstated to AAA, after a call from the president. With our depleted military, there is little doubt we will lose the war in the Middle East. And, with the appointment of 6 Supreme Court justices in the last 16 years, there is no chance of stopping the demise of our country and its military. We need only wait for it to happen. There is no way to fix any of this now. An imam once stated that they would breed our Western women first by raping them. And their daughters would marry a man with a beard. And their granddaughters would be Muslim, and would never know about America. At the time, I thought it was absurd. Now, I see the long war that is Islam, and that there was never any need for terrorism. As a famous man once said, this could be the biggest Trojan horse story of all time. Mr. Trump was right. So, I leave you tonight for good. I apologize for my behavior, and my inability to report properly in 2016, especially since my popularity would have allowed me to speak when others could not. I only wish that more people had looked beyond the glamour of television hosts, to see the corruption that is now endemic in our culture, government, and world. Finally, I can see now that a civil war is brewing, but it will not be easy and could last for decades. After all, it is hard to put the wonders of our Constitution back into the shell once the yoke is broken. Good night, and good luck. This is Anderson Cooper, signing off.